Rav Shimon Schwab, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Levracha, once gave a speech and wrote about what is the purpose of fasting, especially fasting on Tisha B'Av. And he writes like this. He says, actually what we are doing is we are stopping life in a sense. He writes, I'm unworthy to continue living. A person stops eating and drinking and does not partake in life-sustaining nourishment. We don't wear shoes, we don't wash ourselves. We're putting our lives on hold. And he says, the purpose of fasting is to rethink the value of life and to have remorse for the deeds or the misdeeds that we may have done. So in other words, today is a day of reflection. So let's think about a famous Gemara that all of you know, but we will see now a brilliant insight. The Gemara tells us in Gittin Nun Hey Amud Beis, a Kamsa or Bar Kamsa, Charav Yerushalayim. Because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Yerushalayim was Charav. Now, we all know the story. Bar Kamsa, who was disliked by the host, came to a party and the host wanted to throw him out. Now really, he had invited Kamsa. Kamsa was his friend. But when Bar Kamsa showed up, the host embarrassed him and wanted to get rid of him. Bar Kamsa pleaded that he should let him stay. And of course, he wouldn't. Bar Kamsa got so angry, and we know the rest of the story. He did something that got the Caesar angry, and that was the beginning of the Churban. So many people ask the question, but the Gemara says, a Kamsa or Bar Kamsa, Charav Yerushalayim. What did Kamsa do? Why is he part of this, a phrase that Yerushalayim was destroyed? It's only Bar Kamsa. Well, the simple meaning is because he really liked Kamsa and he didn't like Bar Kamsa. But if you take a look at the Marshon, you take a look at other Mefarshim, you know what they say? Kamsa was at the party. His friend was at the party, but Bar Kamsa also came. And Kamsa didn't do anything. He just stood on the side. He should have stopped it. He should have stopped this embarrassment. He should have gone over to the host. He said, listen, you and I are friends. Listen to me. Don't do what you're doing. In other words, somebody who just stands by the side when he has an opportunity to do something, that could lead to terrible things. And that's why the Gemara says, a Kamsa or Bar Kamsa, Charav Yerushalayim. You are about to see a presentation. What does it mean when people don't stand on the side? When people take a step, whether it's an individual or whether it's a community, and they can change lives. You will see how some families were in absolute turmoil and they thought life was over. How are they going to go on in life? But then Hashem orchestrated people to get involved, individuals and communities, and what a difference. Watch this presentation. You will be so inspired. And then we'll think about that, as Rav Schwab said. Well, let's have a reflection. Are we standing on the side, or should we be getting involved?
I was born in Belarus, grew up in a non-religious secular family, went to public school.
I was born in Belarus, Bobruisk. I've lived there since I was a little one until 12. My mom brought me up because my dad passed away when I was 9. The only thing I remember as a Judaism from my family was when my mom would bring me to my grandparents, her parents' house, and they would have matzah that they would bring from Moscow.
When I was approximately 7 years old, I went to first grade, so they line up usually first grader with 10th graders who are ready to graduate, and we give a flower, like a rose. So the 10th graders, when I gave him a rose, after the ceremony was over, went to a restroom to fresh up. He came from the back, took my hair, from the back, hit on a sink, broke my nose, and said, "Dirty Jew." That was my introduction. So I had no idea what Jew means. So I went to my mom. She's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Nothing, I fell." So she's like, I'm like asking, what is Jew is? Why this guy? Oh, Jew is like, we're different. That's it. That was it. But when I went to a 4th grade, I used to be called different names. I used to be fighting like at least once a week. I was begging my mom and my dad, let's leave the country. They didn't understand why I want to leave. I never said why, hiding from them that I had troubles. So they kind of listened to me without understanding why I want. But there was so many people moving now that they actually realized that they have to leave, and left.
Both of our families connected in Italy, actually. That's where I first met my husband, through the immigration process. And ever since then, we became best friends, and we had a very, very long journey as far as like coming together and getting married.
We married, then we had our firstborn son, Benjamin. I had daughter born, they're like 5 years apart. We bought a house in Staten Island by Verrazano Bridge, and we lived there for 15 years, peacefully.
In terms of religion, going back as far as I can remember, we didn't have much except like, okay, we understood we're Jews. I had no idea what that really meant. My sister, Jessie, she grew up going to, a yeshiva, boys and girls school.
I was learning about Judaism, but not so much. They didn't teach about like Shabbat, kosher. So I was just living life like normal kid.
We loved the idea of being Jewish without maybe understanding what are some of the things I'm supposed to do and keep.
Towards the second half of my high school career, we had small problems which eventually became more overwhelming and more serious.
Our very nice neighbors that we have known for 16 years, they became anti-Semitic. Maybe it was dug in a big hole and then it finally came out.
I remember my son telling me that our neighbors were getting upset with our dog being walked outside, even though it was a couple of houses down from him, and they were very, very mean to him, and they were trying to shove him with their feet, and my son was trying to protect him. Soon after, it rolled into the fight that unraveled it all for us, for our family.
My friend and I are standing outside outside their house, like right outside our car, and I don't know what happened, but within a blink of an eye, I hear like a slam of a door, and it was the glass screen door. I thought something broke, and then I hear another sound, another bang. It was the front door of the house, and I see my 200-something pound neighbor, 6 foot something, running out. The earth around me is shaking. He starts saying, "You dirty Russian Jew."
I hear my son running into the house and saying, "Pa, help!" And he's not the type to ask dad for help. He was practicing judo for many years. He was very self-sufficient, very independent, able to take care of himself physically, and he was pretty strong, very confident in that skill. And all of a sudden, he screamed for him.
So my father comes out, 2 hands like this, tries to like stop it, get the father away. The father, in front of my eyes, shoves my dad in the face. So I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I blew up. I gave back what he was giving to me. So I knocked him. I gave him a nice uppercut, which he deserved. And right after that, my father followed, gave him a nice uppercut. Father stumbled back. A few minutes later, we get pulled apart and the cops come. Everything was okay, but now we have to go on with our lives.
Eventually, there was another fight a couple of months later on my son's birthday.
I was with my friends, but all of a sudden, there's a whole group of guys wearing ski masks, wearing all black and blue bandanas around my car. And quickly I realized what's going on. They're trying to rob me. I'm looking around, I'm trying to figure out how to get out of the situation. And I look to my left, and now I'm frozen. Because as I'm holding my wheel, I'm staring down a pistol. At that point, everything just froze. It was like, time was like, it wasn't moving. And I just reacted, so I just slammed on the gas, made it about car's length into the intersection, and before I could blink, I'm now opening my eyes, and my car's in smoke. My car's like a sandwich, and I'm facing backwards on a one-way across the street. What happened was I guess I ran a red light because I wasn't looking, and it was another car's right of way, and I didn't care at the moment. I was just getting away from under gunpoint. So I didn't even think twice. I crawled out my car. my friends and I, we just ran.
I was sitting, like, reading a book on the couch, and all of a sudden, I hear my husband running through the door, very shaken up, and I see his face. He's all pale. My daughter's with him, and he says, "Your son had a life and death situation, but he's alive."
After that, my daughter, we lived in a dead end block, and the yellow bus used to drop her off on the street. So she used to walk a block, and now she was afraid because she saw everything that happened, and I guess it was too much for her. She was afraid, she's a kid. And I had to rush from my work to meet her on the corner, one block, to walk with her. And like a month or two later, I told my wife, we can't live like this, we gotta move. 2019, we sold the house. We live by Brooklyn side in Staten Island, and we moved to another end, opposite end of Staten Island by New Jersey side.
We thought it was like far away from everybody. We didn't even realize it was a Jewish neighborhood. We weren't looking for Judaism at that point in our life. We were just looking to move away, run away.
One day I was headed to Pennsylvania to a place that we stay in the summer, and I'm wearing a bright yellow wrestling tank top with shorts. I get out my car at that point because I wanted to double check, make sure I packed everything. I'm standing near my trunk, and all of a sudden I see this guy that looks like a rabbi walking down the street next to his wife.
I said to him, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" He says, "I live down the block." I said, "I'd like to meet your parents." He says, "Sure, take the number." He gave me that number, and he gave me his number. I said, "Have a great time."
My son calls me, he tells me, "Mommy, Rabbi Reuben and Razy Reuben will come and meet you." And I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting here waiting for them, waiting.
A few nights later, at about 9 o'clock in the night, I said to my wife, "Let's take a walk and let's go visit these people." She said, "It's 9 o'clock, you can't go." I said, we'll try. One of my rebbeim was Rav Chaim Mintz, and he, at the fledgling stage, way before Ura or anything else, he used to walk around in Staten Island and look for windows during Hanukkah time, see who had a menorah on the windowsill, and he would knock on the door and ask them would they try to introduce himself, and ask them would they like to send their son to a yeshiva. He was sincere, and I observed the headway he made. So we rang their bell.
I open the door and I see a couple, and it kind of clicked to me because I didn't meet anybody else here. They tell me who they are, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you? What took you so long? We've been waiting for you. I was so happy to see this couple. I hugged Razy Reuben. I didn't even know her yet, but I felt like I've known her forever because of how open she was. She was smiling at me, and she was so humble, so beautiful.
My wife and her and I saw we connected, and I said, "Where are your parents from?" He says, "They're in my house with my in-laws now." So I said, "I'd like to meet them." He said, "You can't meet them. My father is anti-religious. He won't talk to you." And I said, "I'm not going to talk about religion. I just want to know his background. I want to know something about him. I'm curious." So we walked them to the house, and the father saw me and was eyeing me, and I said, "Hi, my parents are from Europe. Where are you from?" And we started talking, and in the course, we hit it off, sort of. I saw cautious, but he was receptive.
Something woke up in him because he started remembering his journey. He started remembering his childhood. He started remembering that his father was religious, that in his house they actually kept minions, and whenever there was a danger, somebody would knock on the door from the other side, and they would rush to cover everything up, roll up the Torah.
There's a Torah I put under a pillow, He put me on the top, like I sleep on the Torah.
That's how they actually kept it up in Belarus, and it's amazing that under such strong regime, they were still able to fulfill their obligations and have a minyan in the house.
We're still involved on a very close level.
They actually introduced us to our neighborhood, and we met the community. We started going to many people for Shabbat. We started getting inspired. We started learning many new things, and we just became more involved in Judaism and our religion.
Jenny wanted to know about modesty in clothing, so my wife said to her, why don't we go shopping together?
She's like, don't worry, I'll take you to the kosher store, and I will introduce you to the right people here. I'll introduce you to the yeshiva. We have amazing, amazing people, amazing community here that you will be happy to be a part of.
Rabbi Feinstein was always open for us on a short notice. I really like sometimes same day. My wife went to him for like an emergency appointment to ask something.
In the course of asking the Shaila, I realized she wasn't married, or at least not married according to the Chuppah V'Kedushin. And I asked her if that is the case, and she said yes. And I said, so why wait any minute?
She called her husband, who was at home. It was about 7 o'clock at night. And she said, you have to come to Rabbi Feinstein's house right now. He said, we're getting married. They had Bachram, a minyan, and what do you do with a ring? What about a ring? It was her ring. What is it we're going to do? He was Mekadesh with a sefer. He gave his sefer that Reb Reuven had written, they wrote in his name, and he inscribed it. They asked him to inscribe it, and he gave it to the chassan, Gabriel, and he was Mekadesh her with that sefer. Subsequently, in my conversation with Gabriel, he asked me about my family, and I said I have a big family, Baruch Hashem, and one of my sons lives in Staten Island at that time, and he happens to be a male. He says, a male? That's very interesting. I said, why is that so interesting? He says, well, my father could use a bris.
My father understood that he has to have a bris even though he's already like 72 years old. It's a big sin not to have one. And October 25th, 2020, I remember the day. I went with him. He came home after, and I said, Pa, this is your day. This is your day to ask for anything. Hashem is right with you this day. You can ask for anything. Just go and pray. I put a tefillin on him. He put a tallit, and he went to a corner and prayed. I'm not sure what he asked for. And since then, he started changing his life.
I'm in awe of how far he's come along. My mother-in-law is also trying her best, for sure, for sure. She's trying to cover her hair now, and she comes to us for Shabbos, and she, davens and prays for her family, and she lights candles with me. Each one in our family has their own way that this has shaped them up.
I don't remember exactly how, but I got acquainted with Rabbi Shandalov, Rabbi Deva Shandalov. He's my rabbi right now back home. He basically called me when I was in Pennsylvania, and he got me to start learning with him. I don't know how he did it. He managed it. He got me to start learning with him a few times a week. And right away, after a week and a half, invited me to a place called Sinai Retreats. At Sinai Retreats, a week and a half in, Rabbi Shandalov and Rabbi Teitelbaum, they just looked at me. They saw the way I was like soaking in all the learning, the fact that I wanted more than 3-4 hours a day. I wanted more and more. They both, in 2 different days, mentioned Machon Shlomo and Machon Yaakov, which I didn't know what that meant, but I searched it up. I searched Machon Shlomo, and right away I felt in love with the hashkafa, the ideas of what they wanted to instill upon their students. I just finished 2 years there, and it was definitely the best place I could have been. Rabbi Moshe Rubin, when he accepted me with open arms and my family, he really just sparked, not just a spark within me, but B'ezrat Hashem, my future family. that we'll have Torah, and their kids, their grandkids.
If it wasn't for people like them who made that outreach, extended their hand and opened their arms and took us in, then we wouldn't be where we are now.
Rabbi and Mrs. Moshe Rubin took the initiative. And did you hear that question that Mrs. Levin asked the lady at the door? She said, "What took you so long?" Now, of course, she said it with a smile, but there are thousands of our brothers and sisters all over that are asking that question. And they're asking, what's taking us so long? They are asking, they are seeking, and they are waiting. They're waiting to be inspired. And we've got to be like Rabbi Moshe Rubin and his Rebbetzin. They took the initiative, and look at the difference. Look what happened. You know, there's a famous story that I tell so many times about Rab Shlomo Hyman, Zeichat Tzadik Livrocha. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'das, and one day in Williamsburg there were only 4 boys in the class because there was a snowstorm. And he was telling the Gemara, a brand new Gemara with a whole geschmack and a whole enthusiasm. And one of the boys said, "Rebbe, take it easy. There's only 4 of us here today. Normally there were 20 in the class." And you know what Rab Shlomo Hyman said? "You think I'm only talking to you? I'm talking to you and to your children and to your grandchildren. I'm talking to you and to your Talmidim and to your Talmidim's Talmidim." And one of the people in that class was Rab Moshe Samuels, who was a Rebbe in Torah V'das, had thousands of Talmidim over the years that he taught. And so therefore, Rab Shlomo Hyman was right. When you're talking to an individual and you're elevating an individual, it's not only him, it's the family, it's the children and the grandchildren. And in this story that we just saw, it went back a generation. Could you believe that? I couldn't get over that. The grandfather at 72 years old had a bris. Only because Rabbi Moshe Rubin took the initiative. And of course we saw what's happening with the children. We can get involved. That's really the purpose of this presentation. But my dear brothers and sisters, wherever you are in the world watching this, I feel that I must prepare you for what you are about to see. You are about to experience a video as never before. You will perhaps cry as you've never cried on a Tisha B'Av. I've watched this coming presentation a few times, and every time it breaks my heart. Every time I've cried. You're about to witness destruction, devastation, hope, and rebuilding. You will see what it means, Mi Ka'amcha Yisrael. You will see when a community feels an achrayus to other Jews. The only thing I can tell you, watch this, but be prepared. You are about to be moved and inspired as never before.
My name is Martin Langesfeld. I'm 24 years old. I grew up in Miami, Florida, just me and my sister. My sister Nikki was absolutely everything to me. Everything I knew, everything I admired, I learned was from her. I never grew up with any religion at all. We never were involved in the Jewish community. I just knew I'm Jewish. By blood, I'm Jewish. My parents are Jewish. My grandparents, everyone in my family is Jewish. My sister Nikki married a wonderful man, Louis Sadovnik, who she met 7 years ago in the University of Florida. As a wedding gift, Louis's grandfather gifted them apartment 804 for 2 years rent-free. As just here, enjoy it. Don't stress about the money. Here's a beautiful oceanfront apartment for you to start your life. They already had conversations about starting a family. She was an attorney, ready to take over the world. It was June 23rd, and it was a normal night for me. I was out with some friends, just having a good time out. It was 2:55 in the morning when I get home. And my mother, she opened my door right away and she said, Martin, a building collapsed on Collins Avenue. She showed me a news notification from CNN on the phone, and it said, building collapse, Collins Avenue. No name, nothing.
The 12-story complex simply turning to rubble.
The building, it collapsed.
Building is gone. There's no elevators. It almost resembles the Trade Center.
People on the balcony shouting that they are trapped inside of their apartment.
Racing to the scene, firefighters went to work rescuing residents trapped in the portion of the building which had yet to collapse.
You still have people standing upstairs that don't need to be evacuated.
I remember going down into the garage so my parents don't hear, and I called 911. I called them 3 times. The first 2 times they had no idea what was going on. They said, yeah, we have some reports of a building collapse. We don't know what building it is. And by the 3rd time, I remember exactly, it was a lady. She said, sir, I think it is Champlain Tower South. We arrived to the scene and it was a disaster. Complete disaster.
I saw, fires and debris and parts of the building all over the place, glass and people screaming.
I was just trying to peek to see where the building was. All I remember is looking up at the building to my right and counting floors. Just looking up, going like this and seeing where the 8th floor was. Just to see if the floor was still there. It was there, but half of it. So I started thinking where the beds were, where her office was. And I realized that the beds, the 2 rooms with the beds were what was missing. From that moment, from 3:30 a.m. was when my life changed completely.
The news was starting to, pick up. People were starting to make phone calls. It was becoming a bigger deal. I got a message to my phone that they needed nurses. They needed female personnel to come help. I just got in the car, I grabbed my stethoscope, and I went.
There were hundreds of people on the street, just having forced to come out of their homes and standing there waiting to see where should they go, what should they do. There were no roof over their heads, there was no place to go. Slowly people started to gather. The major gathering place at that time was the community center.
In the community center, there was a lot of chaos. You had the police officers there, the Hatzalah members there, and some family members and friends, and they were all kind of trying to figure out what was going on.
I remember Hatzalah would follow me around with Gatorade, a bagel, and a bottle of water for hours. Just follow me around, shadow me. Because in my head, I said, if my sister is stuck in there and she's not drinking water and eating, I'm not going to either.
It was very painful to see these people because they were in between a stage of grief, and also on the other hand, they still have that faith that their family members are still there, and we're trying to keep that alive because there's always a chance.
Hope is something that you cannot dismiss, you cannot diminish, you cannot in any way try to remove it, because that's life. And those of us that were on the location on a pretty regular basis, day and night, who watched the process and knew what was going on, and dealt with the professionals, we recognized that from a practical point of view, the hope was hanging on to an absolute miracle like the splitting of the sea.
It was like a waiting game, a horrible waiting game. And you would just hope that one of those days they would say, we found someone alive. One of those days. Anyone, you didn't care if it was your family, you just wanted hope.
The first thing we train as chaplains is to detect pain. And with our skills, we could diffuse the pain. We cannot remove it, but we could diffuse pain and ease tension.
I got very close with some of the chaplains who were there, including Elisa Mermostin.
When I met Martin, I saw a very broken young man who had to be the support for his parents while he himself was dealing with his own sadness. Pablo and Andrea, the parents, were so broken. This was their only daughter, beautiful, beautiful girl, accomplished girl, married, and their lives were shattered. Twice a day we sat in the briefings with them, and we shared with them, like whatever news they were hearing, we experienced with them. And we were the shoulder to cry on.
I don't know if there's a way to even express, it was literally hell on earth. Every second of it. And this is why we were there. Because if we, chaplains, felt that way, you couldn't imagine what the family members felt.
You keep slapping yourself, you keep pinching yourself, slapping yourself just to wake up from this nightmare. And you come to a realization that you're not waking up from this. This is reality. And you go into survivor instincts for your family. You forget who you are as a person, and you do everything you can that you didn't think you were capable of to find your family when you're desperate.
Our initial reaction was that let's try to get the best people possible that know how to do this as best as they can, as best as possible. And of course the IDF came to mind. I had a relationship with the new Consul General, Maor Elbaz. He'd been on board for 4 days when this happened. And we talked about bringing in the IDF.
It took over 2 weeks for both my family members to be found and identified. And throughout this time, I never felt alone. And not because of the friends and family that were around me at all times, because of the community that was around me, of people that I did not know.
Government officials, the governor, the senators, they all had very clear expression of the unique impact that the Jewish community had and how it really resonated around the world, of how this community reacted.
We are also seeing an abundance of help coming from the Jewish community. Here at the Shul of Bell Harbor Synagogue, they have been receiving donations throughout the day, everything from mattresses, food, bottled water, even kids' toys.
Not missing on this tragic day, the goodness of humanity, people helping other people they'd never even met.
The Jewish ambulance service Hatzalah is sending some of its elite members from Israel.
The Jewish Community Services of South Florida is providing emergency mental health care services to families, first responders, and community members traumatized by recent events.
Several people gathered outside of this synagogue praying.
From box trucks loaded with boxes of food and water to mattresses, incredibly, optimism was still in supply too.
Nothing can bring back the building, with the people in it. But at least for that period of time, we wanted to make sure that community center turns to a home.
We were able to do something that I never thought I would ever be able to see. Serving 3,000 kosher meals a day, around the clock. As time went on, we were sending food and meals to the survivors and to the families and to the victims. At this point, they were relocated into other places, whether it was the Grand Beach, or whether it was the Seaview Hotel, and other places.
Within the first 3-4 days, we had about 1,000 people sign up on Yedidim website to volunteer. Within a week, we had almost 2,000 volunteers. Over time, we had over 2,000 people just signed up on the website, aside from the people I already had in my palm, ready to go. People, they didn't think twice. They just did whatever needed to be done to help.
That unity, watching Jewish people in action, the world doesn't get to see that. It was on display here, where everyone felt a part of it, everyone.
Very quickly, everyone understood that this is an effort for everyone. This is not an effort for just kosher people or just Jewish people. This was for everyone. Everybody was like a brother and sister there. And we treated everyone like family, no matter where they're from.
At some point, I can't forget, it was me, Joe, and Ellie at the same time in the kitchen, and a few guys from fire department came, and they said, when we eat this food, we feel blessed. We feel like when we go back there to work and to do our work, were kind of protected. You know, that got us all very emotional because we felt that, you know, the stuff that we do impacts, you know, so many others in so many ways. And you feel that these people, they will always remember that when they needed somebody here to be on their side, they would always remember that the Jewish people were there for them.
We did not stop receiving, and not once did we ask. All these Jewish people just kept giving us, giving hugs even, not all material. Giving comfort, giving love, care. They didn't stop giving. It didn't matter what time of day. There were people at 5 in the morning and at 5 p.m. At all times of day, they were giving. And that was shocking to us. Not once have we ever experienced receiving so much without asking. It turned into strength for me. By the funeral, the people who were there, of course, it was a lot of people. We tried to make it private, and it ended up being very big. But I remember seeing so many people who I met throughout the catastrophe there, picking up a shovel with me to cover up my sister. People who I met 3 weeks before, who became my family.
Throughout the whole experience, he realized what it means to be part of Am Yisrael and how one Jew cares for the other, and there's no ulterior motive in there whatsoever. We were just there for Martin, his parents, Andrea and Pablo, just because we care, because it's one year to another. And I think that his eyes were really opened by that.
After the funeral, I invited Pablo, his wife, Andrea, and Martin for a Shabbat meal. And they experienced, for the first time, Martin experienced what a shofar is, was Elul time. He experienced what a kiddush is, what a challah is, what knedlach are, what kosher wine is. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of a revelation.
Mendy had Martin and his father Pablo become chaplains, which was great. And then we had a chaplain retreat. Back in November, we had a chaplain retreat in Fort Bragg on an army base, which was fun, it was interesting. And Martin was there, he came. And Rabbi Yisrael Majeski from LA was there. Great guy, he's also a chaplain. And I went over to him and I said to him, Rabbi Majeski, you have a job over these next 25 hours. You have to get close to Martin and you have to convince him to come on Project Inspire's Texas retreat.
When I went to Project Inspire in Texas, it was a very small, tight-knit group. And on the last day, I got really close to many of the people who went on that trip in Texas.
You just saw, it's a brotherhood. You're part of something without doing anything. You didn't have to join anything. You didn't have to become a member, a card-carrying member. You're a Jew, I'm a Jew, we're part of the same club. And we're there for each other, good times or bad times. And I think he really understood that and felt that and appreciated it.
As a person and my life in general has taken a complete turn. I'm not the same person I was 1 year ago. I'm slowly opening my eyes to a whole world that I didn't know existed.
There were people who kept up with him from the trip. And the next thing I know, Rabbi Sampson calls me and says, Elisa, I want you to know, July 3rd, Martin is going to Tisha Torah. And I was like, because that was like my goal the whole time.
This entire catastrophe made me realize there is so much more to life than money. I decided this year to put my entire industry aside, my profession, what I've worked my entire life for, to learn, to become a better person, to grow. I'm going to Israel to learn not only the Torah and the studies of it, but to understand why for 1 year people from this community were standing and continuing to stand next to me.
Our base was destroyed for Sinas Chinam. We're only going to get it back with the antidote, and that's Avas Chinam. What will make Hashem happier than to see us caring about people we don't even know who they are, but that they are our brothers and sisters.
Throughout the 3 weeks of the waiting period in Surfside, I felt like I lost everything. I lost my family, but at the same time, I gained the family I never knew I had next to me the entire time. From that day on, I said I need to be a part of this community. So here I am looking over the kotel, taking classes in Esha Torah, Project Inspire. They've been with me from the beginning and continue to be with me 1 year later.
There is so much to learn from what we just saw. But there's something that strikes me. There's a famous chazal that we all know in Yuma Daf Tesamid Beis, and it tells us, why was the second Beis HaMikdash destroyed, even though that they had Torah and mitzvahs and Gemilas Chasadim? It was destroyed because there was Sinas Chinam. And what we need more than anything else, especially today, is Avas Chinam. Love of another Jew just because they're another Jew. They're a Yid, a brother and a sister. And what to me is so remarkable is look what Elisa Mermelstein, a Project Inspire activist, did. She saw this boy. She saw his pain. She saw his devastation and his emptiness. And what did she do? She went to Rabbi Majeski at a retreat and she said, this boy, you got to get him to Esha Torah. Right now, he's ready. He wants to join the club, so to speak. That's Klal Yisrael. All of a sudden, the Rabbonim in Miami opened him up to a world that he didn't know existed. And now he was going to get spiritual sustenance. He didn't have it before. He didn't even know that it was missing. But look, because of Alyssa's involvement and commitment, look how this boy is changing. And today, of course, we know he's learning in Eretz Yisrael. And as we said before, it's not only affecting him, it's going to affect his children and his grandchildren, and Mit Hashem, his great-grandchildren. You know what once occurred to me? When we daven Shemoneh Esrei every day, the middle part is Bakasha. We ask Hashem for all the things that we need. And yet, every Bakasha, every request is Lashon Rabim in plural. V'choneinu, give us wisdom. Salach lanu, forgive us. Rifa'enu, heal us. Baruch aleinu, bless us with panasa. Shmak aleinu, listen to us. You know what I think Chazal are teaching us? Yiddishkeit is not only about you. It's not only about me. It's about all of us. And we have to daven for our brothers and sisters. And we have to be concerned for them. And that's the essence of what Project Inspire is all about. Today, you can become part of Project Inspire. You can sign up today on this screen to learn with a fellow Jew. You can inspire another person. And when you get involved and you see, and you have seen, what Project Inspire does, you can get people to come to retreats. And those are fabulous, life-changing experiences. You can get people to go to Eretz Yisrael. And of course, that's a life-changing experience. And as we said before, our brothers and sisters are waiting. Get involved in Project Inspire. You can learn with someone. You, on any level, whatever level they want or what you want, you'll be able to do that. On this day of Tisha B'Av, as we said, Chazal consider it a moyed. Our brothers and sisters are waiting. we are also waiting. We're waiting for Mashiach. And maybe if we answer the call to our brothers and sisters, Mashiach will answer our call and then come. Take 2 minutes. Just sign up. Make a difference in somebody's life. It'll take you just 2 minutes to sign up, but you can change a life of another person and their family. Hashem should bless every single one of you. And next year, we should all be able to do this in Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
Yerushalayim. tishkach yemini. Oy tidbak lishoyni lechi. Simcha,